The next day, another two buildings had fallen down. The first was an upholsterer's workshop, and the second was actually someone's house. It was one of those quite small ones which joins onto the houses next to it in a little row. We had to get past it to get to school. It looked a bit like someone had just cut the house out, like you would with the slice of cake. I asked Michael's mum who had lived there, but she shushed me. She didn't want to talk about it. Did you hear about the buildings that have fallen down? I asked Gaia. Gaia looked at me as if she was saying, what do you take me for? Of course I have, Adiola. Everyone's talking about it. Sorry, I know, I said. It's just that Mum hasn't said much about it to me, so I wasn't sure. My voice trailed off. What I was going to say was I wasn't sure how big a deal it was. I know that might sound a bit stupid, but sometimes it's hard until you've spoken to someone else about something to know how serious it is. Gaia looked at me softly. It's quite bad, Addy. They don't know what's causing it. People are getting scared. I looked away from her gaze. We just need to wake up tomorrow and hear that nowhere else has fallen down, she said. Then I think everyone will calm down. Did you hear about that little house that fell? I shook my head. There was an old woman living there. They found her body underneath some bricks. We both went quiet for a moment. But this is the weird thing, Gaia continued. There weren't nearly enough bricks left where the house fell. There should have been loads and loads more. The same thing happened with the pub and the warehouse and the other place. The workshop, I said. What? The other place was the upholsterer's workshop. Right, the workshop. So I think someone has taken the bricks. So you think a person is doing this, I asked, to steal bricks? I don't know, Gaia said, but I can't think why else it's happening. Why do you think they are falling? I don't know. I guess I thought there was just something wrong with the buildings. But why those ones? And why is it happening all of a sudden, all at the same time? Gaia said. But why would anyone want to steal bricks like that? I don't know, Gaia said. How about because there's a monster who only likes the taste of bricks from Camberwell? Yes, I said, warming to the idea. And he hates the taste of bricks from anywhere else. Yeah, he tried the ones in Elephant and Castle and spat them all out. And don't get me started on the bricks in Peckham. They're far too salty. He only comes out at night because he's very shy about people seeing him eat. We laughed at each other. He doesn't mean anyone any harm, I continued. He's quite a nice monster, really. He's really sorry about the lady who died. Quickly our grins fell from our faces. It wasn't a joke, a story we had made up. Someone had gone to bed one night thinking everything was okay, but the next morning they wouldn't ever wake up, lying buried underneath the rubble of their own home. I wonder what's really going on, said Gaia, and when is it going to end? I didn't say, but there was a question in my mind too. I wondered if more people would get hurt along the way. It turned out I was right to worry. That night, our school was on the news. There was the entrance that we went in every day on the screen, just by where the newsreader was standing. It had a stone over the entrance that had boys inscribed on it in curly capitals from the olden days when boys and girls had to come in through different doors. The newsreader was saying something about whether our school should be closed down or not. I raced into Mum's room, flinging the door open so it clanged against the wall. Mum, wake up! My school's on telly! There was a funny, stale smell in her room and the curtains were drawn, although it was still light outside. Mum! I sat down next to her. She just looked like a lump in the bed. She lay so still that for one moment I wondered whether, if I pulled the covers back, I would just find a pile of cushions and realise that Mum had been tricking me this whole time. Maybe she was out at the supermarket this very moment buying the ice cream we liked. I threw back the pink blanket, but there were no pillows, just Mum with her eyes tightly closed, her body compacted together as though she was making herself into a ball. I prodded her, but she didn't move, so I shook her, gently at first, and then with more force. She moaned and turned onto her front. I was worried she wouldn't be able to breathe if she slept face down, so I turned her back onto her side. She sighed deeply, but she didn't wake. Mum! I shouted. Mum! More loudly this time. Mum! 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 Her eyes flickered and then opened. Addy, she whispered. She tried to moisten her lips. Mum, wake up! What's wrong? My school's on the news. You've got to see it. Not now, Addy, not now. Get me some water, would you? But we'll miss it, I said. Remembering what I had heard, I added, and they might close the school down. Oh, Mum said, and her eyes flickered shut and she fell back to sleep. When I came back into the sitting room, they stopped showing my school, but they were still talking about what was happening with buildings. It ran all night, or at least right up to where I switched it off to go to bed. Then they couldn't stop talking about it. That was when I knew that Gaia was right. People were getting scared, and the only way they would stop feeling scared would be if they woke up the next day and no more buildings had fallen down. But it didn't happen like that. More and more fell. I saw on the news that some people had died because they'd been sleeping in their beds when the walls had fallen down around them and then their floors had given way. Lots of people who knew all about how to make houses were on the television talking about foundations, and other people were talking about terror or something like that. It always seemed to happen at night time when the buildings would fall. No one had actually seen it happen. We just kept waking up in the morning to find out that another and another had gone. It was beginning to look really bad from what I could see from my window. There were all these funny little patches in between buildings now, more and more each day. They decided to send in lots of policemen who sat in vans and walked around at night to see if they could find out what was happening. We all watched too. I could see lots of lit up windows and blocks around us. In a strange sort of way, I felt less lonely seeing lots of other people looking out of their windows. I wasn't the only one anymore. One night I counted 78 faces. We all wanted to find out what was going on. There was the horrible day when we all had to go for an assembly. All the teachers looked red-eyed and wouldn't meet our stares. Mr. Chelmsford told us that Layla in Year 5 and her brother Mehdi in Year 1 were no longer with us. Their house had collapsed when they were inside it, and it took me a moment to realise what he was trying to say. We couldn't believe that they'd really gone. It did not seem real at all. The day after that, the reception teacher, Mrs. Brooke, didn't come to school, and instead they had a teacher no one had ever seen before. There was another assembly where they told us all that she had died too. Everyone was crying a lot now, not because we were sad about Layla, Mehdi, and Mrs. Brooke, but because we knew someone else would be next. In the days that followed, there were always a few more who were missing, and eventually we stopped having assemblies. Every day I looked for Gaia. I could feel the knot in my stomach getting tighter and tighter until I saw her. I didn't realise that she was just as worried about me until one day she said to me, "Maybe it's not a good idea for you to be walking about after school." On the news that morning, they said another 5 buildings had fallen. It wasn't stopping as we'd all hoped. The number of falling buildings was getting bigger each day. "I need to get some more food though. We're about to run out," I said. Although that was what I said, I was actually starting to feel funny about being out on the streets by myself. For one thing, I would have to walk past a lot of the buildings that had fallen down. In some of them, I knew that the people who had lived inside them had died when the walls and floors collapsed around them. The real reason, though, was that even though I knew the buildings only seemed to fall down at night, our streets just didn't feel safe anymore. Even with the sunshine streaming down, our little world kept changing and no one knew why. It felt like Gaia was able to read my mind. She knew exactly what I was thinking. "I know it always happens at night, but things have changed around here," she said. "I just think it'd be better if you went with someone else." I shook my head. Mum was sleeping as much as ever. She hadn't been outside for a long time. The only other person I could ask was Michael's mum, but I'd accidentally knocked into Michael on the playground a couple of days before, and he turned round to me scowling. "What did you do that for?" he said. "Sorry," I said, "it was an accident." "Just stay away, you hear?" I'd never really had a conversation with Michael before, if you call this one, and I was surprised at how quietly he spoke and how angry he sounded. "Okay," I said. "I don't know why my mum is looking out for you, but I'm not your friend, all right?" "Okay," I said again, unsure of what else to say. "Don't cry, Addie," Michael said as he walked off. I wasn't going to cry, but I did feel surprised. Shocked, I suppose. I knew Michael wasn't that keen on me, but I didn't realise how much he disliked me. Gaia said he wasn't worth the brain space, but I saw her tripping him up on purpose as he walked past in the dining hall. "Sorry," she said sweetly, and Michael just scowled in much the same way he'd scowled at me. So I wasn't about to start asking his mum for favours. "Mum's not great at the moment," I told Gaia. "I didn't mean your mum," Gaia said, her eyes shining. "I'll come with you." "No," I said. I think I shouted it. The last thing I wanted was Gaia close to the falling buildings. It was funny that we had both had the same strong feeling that we should stay away from them if we could. Anyway, I went on, your mum and dad wouldn't let you. Gaia smiled. They don't have to know, she said. Let's see your list then, Gaia said as we turned off down the road towards the shops. The thing is, Mum had stopped giving me lists by now. I knew the right stuff to get. It wasn't a big problem or anything, but I knew Gaia wouldn't approve. When I first started going shopping, Gaia had said at the very least Mum was making sure I was getting proper food by giving me a list, so I wasn't just buying rubbish like crisps and chocolate and nothing else. I didn't want Gaia to get cross with Mum about it, so I said, I'll get the same things all the time now. I know what to get, and hoped she'd leave it at that. She didn't say anything though, and I felt glad until I realised why she was so quiet. We were standing in front of one of the fallen buildings. I'm not sure what it used to be, because it had been empty for quite a long time, even before it fell. It was big and had crumbling red bricks and large windows with lots of panes that had been smashed. Now that it had gone, it was a massive empty space. The police had put up lots of red and white tape all around it, and we could see a couple of men with yellow hard hats on who were having a look at some of the rubble left on the ground. Let's keep going, I said, and I tugged at Gaia's arm. We kept walking, and then we passed the old pub, the first building that had fallen. Gaia stopped to look, but I kept walking, so she had to run up to catch up with me. Did you notice? Gaia started. I waited, but she didn't carry on. What? I asked. Did you notice something funny? Again, she stopped herself. She looked behind her to where the pub once stood. I don't know, she said, I don't know. What? I asked again. I thought the bricks looked a bit, this is going to sound really strange, but I thought they looked a bit blue. Blue? I know it sounds weird, but I'm sure I saw it. We'll have a look on our way back. Okay, well, it's just, I don't know. I get the feeling that we shouldn't be hanging around there. There's a funny feeling about it. I felt it too. Was it just because we knew what had happened in those buildings, or was it something else? I couldn't explain, but I didn't want to stand there for long either. Something was telling me to move away. We did the shopping as quickly as we could and headed home. We didn't see anyone on the way back. There was no sign of the two men in the yellow hard hats who'd been sifting through the rubble, and we only stopped briefly to look again. Maybe, I said, maybe it is a bit blue. Do you think there's something on the bricks? Gaia said. We need to get really close to see. Maybe we could do it tomorrow, after school. Not now. No, not now, I agreed. We'd hurried off down the road. Thanks for coming with me, I said. It's okay, Gaia replied. We were probably getting scared over nothing. I mean, apart from being unlucky if your building falls down when you're inside it, people aren't getting hurt just going past the fallen down ones. Yeah, you're right, I said. We said goodnight and walked off in opposite directions, back to our own homes. Right, we'll pause it there. I'm just going to stop recording. If you want to turn your mics and cameras on.